The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
Goodness me, a ton of important and impactful Pacers news.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Many of you have already heard the things Haliburton said or written stories about it, but if you haven't, he spoke in Indy for the first time since the finals at his camp over the weekend. He spoke in Oshkosh and I think at Iowa State earlier in the offseason, but this is his first time with local media since. So first of all, unrelated to anything about his Achilles tear and his recovery, which does have a specific thing that I think you need to know. He was originally scheduled to have his camp in Indy, which he's done every year since he got traded here, by the way, on June 28th, I believe, like right after when the finals would have ended. That got announced like pretty early in the playoffs. So who knows if he would have done it if they just lost game 7, he didn't get hurt. Obviously, they couldn't do it then after he did get hurt. Not many players would reschedule and still do it at a different venue in Indy. Good on him for doing that, right? Good on him for coming back. Like, he can't hardly participate to the extent he normally does, but he was like refereeing and walking around the extent he could, smiling in every picture. Good on him for doing that, right? And good on his Pacers teammates for showing up for him. Cam Jones was there. Taylor Peter was there. TJ McConnell was there. James Johnson's not even on the team. He was there. General Pargo was there. A bunch of other Pacers staffers. Anyway, that's all the stuff that says a lot about Ty. Like, those guys aren't just showing up because he's their vet and he's hurt. Like, they actually really like him. But the stuff that you need to know. Okay, it's been about 8 weeks, he said, a little over that, and his recovery journey. Me talking right now, I think it's been 2 months and 2 days since his surgery. He called it 8 weeks at the time we were talking to him, which is fair and fine. And he is walking out of a boot sometimes. He took, obviously, the Puma promo picture with no boot on that you saw on social media. When we were there and when he was doing some refereeing stuff, he was in a boot, which I don't know the exact timing of when he would take it off or how that all works. But that is the current status of his recovery when it comes to the boot. The boot coming off is a big deal, not because he can like actually do anything with an Achilles injury, but it allows him to do weightlifting, do arm stuff, be more mobile, right? Like, we saw Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, what they were able to do, just like launching a heavy ball off the backboard during the season. Like, it helps with your strength and all that. And you can work on other stuff. Ben Mathurin had a shoulder injury a couple of years ago, and he could still do leg work. He could still ball handle with his left hand. Like, the more you recover, the more you're able to do, the better. And obviously he has a plan and things like that, but getting out of the boot, that is step one to getting that all to come. He called that a small win, which he wants a lot more of. He is, of course, falling in love with the grind of recovery, even though it feels Groundhog Day-ish. Some people he's leaning on that I think will be interesting, because 2 of these guys will talk to quite a bit about the Achilles recovery process throughout the season. I think you can see where this is going. One is Caitlin Clark. She's also injured, obviously, and they have spent time together in the weight room, and their time just overlaps, and they happen to chat about recovery and things of that nature. They're super close. I think that's pretty cool. The other 2 that I find quite funny are Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, 2 guys who have also gone through the Achilles recovery process in pretty recent times, obviously, are still going through it, honestly, is probably a better way to phrase it. Haliburton called them the perfect duo to vent to because they are currently / just did go through it, and they actually understand what he's going through. They understand the emotions, what he's feeling, muscular wise, things of that nature. Like, that's actually a rare, not advantage. It's not like, oh my gosh, this changes everything for Haliburton, but it's a big deal to have those kind of resources available in general. Like, not a lot of guys, when I've talked about, for example, I just did a Wiseman show and I went through some recent NBA players who tore their Achilles and how it impacted their back-to-backs. Basically, none of them played in them. But you go through those guys and, like, none of them were on the same team or at the same time. And obviously the Pacers having 3 right now sucks. It's not a good thing. But this is a small advantage, is one, for the team side in general. They have seen the process up close for a year. They understand the benchmarks. They understand the limitations, what to do, etc. And it's good for Haliburton to have that kind of resource to lean on. It sucks for the young centers that they have to hear him vent, but such is life. But I consider that mostly a good thing. And I think it's good for the understanding for fans about the recovery process that, everybody will be able to check in with Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson, obviously not overdoing it, but just like, what was it like at this stage and that stage, and how can that apply to Tyrese? And, did you give him any advice, stuff like that? Like, that'll actually be a good learning experience for everybody, including you, the fan, about the process. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The biggest, thing that Haliburton said about his recovery is not actually, news, but it's still something that made me go, oh, okay, noteworthy, write that down. Okay, we know he's not playing this season. So if you said, what's his timeline to return? Everybody would say the start of the 26-27 season. Yes, that's his play on the court timeline. Someone asked him about a recovery timeline. Is there a structured date of return? And he said no. And one, that's fine. There should be no pressure for him to return this season. But two, just know that there is not a benchmark date that if Tyrese Haliburton's not healthy by, start to panic or anything like that. If he's ahead or behind schedule, it's not a thing. Right? He does not have a timetable to return. And I think getting hurt on the last day makes that a possibility. They don't have to try to rush it. They don't have to try to slow play. They don't have to try to put a date on it. They're obviously going to. So here's the thing about timetables. You hear no timetable for a player. That's no timetable for the public or for you and me. Right. And that's fair. Everybody has a recovery schedule and there's generic goals, but no specific time, no specific this is when it has to happen. I thought that was at least noteworthy or interesting. Not that I expected him to have one, but just because of who he is, I wondered if he'd say, I really want to be doing this by this. This is good for him to not have to go through that. And I think everybody kind of rolled past that because he was out for the season, but nothing to hold him to, I think, is a good thing. The last bit of news from Haliburton at his camp, not about his injury, not about him, not about the camp. He has talked to Miles Turner since the departure. Obviously, he said the same thing every NBA player says about their teammates when they leave them. He said he had to make the decision that is best for him, and that was pretty much the end of that. You can see the whole thing. I put the whole interview, I think, on my YouTube channel, or in Forbes. I wrote a whole story about his camp, his recovery, what it means for the Pacers, the two young bigs, all sorts of stuff like that. But that's the first time he's talked locally. No finals questions. I hope we can talk to him about the emotions of that and the day it happened at media day if he speaks, or if he even speaks, very often this season, because you probably won't hear much from Tyrese Haliburton this year. You'll see him a lot. He certainly would like to be around the team and as involved as possible. But that is your Tyrese Haliburton update. For a much smaller update that is less important that I mentioned the other day, expect a number change coming for the Pacers this year. James Wiseman, I mentioned this offhand in the Wiseman episode 2 days ago. He is switching from number 13 to number 11. Tony Bradley is still on the team. Tony Bradley's number 13. Tony Bradley swooped in and was Mr. Steal Your Number last year when he took 13 after Wiseman was traded away a couple weeks before he arrived. He's still 13, so James Wiseman has to change his uniform number, I believe, for the second time of his career. He's only been 33 or 13. So if you have a James Wiseman jersey that you got after the preseason or after his one regular season game, you now have a very, very rare uniform up there with an Isaiah Jackson 23 uniform or any other of the Lance Stevenson 6, all these funky different Pacers jerseys of legend. James Wiseman 13 now joins the crew.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse, you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
Nikola Jovic has been stellar with the Serbian national team.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
Nikola Jovic, dude, is looking good at Eurobasket. Serbia routing Estonia in their first game on Wednesday afternoon during the Eurobasket tournament. Nico had 12 points in the first quarter. He finished with 18 points, shot 6 of 8 overall, 3 of 4 on three-pointers. He had 4 rebounds, 6 assists. He had a steal. And, David, he did it all in just 16 minutes. He didn't even have to play in the fourth quarter because this thing was a blowout. And, look, I think people need to watch these highlights. because I just love the way that Serbia is using Nico in these games. He's being he's all over the floor, man. Like he's not necessarily running plays. Serbia's not really running plays for him. It's not point Nico. That's not what's really happening here. He did have the 6 assists in this game, but it's all happening within the flow of the offense. And they play up tempo. Obviously, having Nikola Jovic there is very helpful because he attracts so much attention and he's such a great floor general and he's getting everybody involved. But it's not just Nico shooting from the corners, right? Even though he is doing that. He's the trailer in transition. He's running the break and finding guys on lobs and for cuts. He's empowered to play all over the court, and I think that enables him to lean more into his versatility and all the things that we love so much about Nikola Jovic. And while it's so exciting to watch him play this way for Serbia, at the same time, you can't help but wonder what this would look like if he were sort of let off the leash a little bit in Miami and allowed to explore kind of the entire studio space of his game.
Is he not being allowed? I mean, do you really think that's the case? Because I don't know if I've ever considered it from that perspective. And watching him play today, I don't know if it's my biggest takeaway, but certainly I think it's a factor to consider. One, you're facing a far inferior opponent in Estonia. No knock on them necessarily, but Serbia, clearly a much better basketball team. And you're also playing with the best basketball player on the planet. And that being the case, as you said, not only is he a player that commands a lot of attention from defenders, but because of his incredible passing skills, he's going to find you in places that maximize what you can do out on the floor. So is it that Nico in Miami can't thrive because he's not being allowed to play his game, or it's because he's being asked to do more than perhaps he's capable of with players that don't put him in a position to succeed? And I wonder whether or not there's the opportunity for that role, maybe for Bam Adebayo to become kind of the hub on offense the way he has been in the past.
Maybe allowed wasn't the right word. It's not. I don't think Eric Spoelstra is holding him back from being a better basketball player. Like, I don't think he's like, you know what, we know you could do all these things, but we'd rather you just not.
He's being asked to do something specific though, or maybe he's not being allowed to, not being showcased in a way where he's kind of free to do.
I think that's fair. I don't think that he's enabled to do it. And again, I don't know. It's just he's playing with Jokic. They were playing a lousy Estonia team. Serbia was favored by 31 points in this game. They were supposed to blow. This is what it was supposed to look like. Like Nikola Jovic would be the best. Nikola Jovic would be the best player on Estonia. Okay, so it's not shocking that necessarily that this was a blowout. Although I don't want to take anything away from Nico in this game because again, the way that he's being used, and also in some of the preparation games, that's sort of like this isn't new for the way that Serbia is or that Jovic has been used for Serbia now, or even in the past when he's played for them. His best stretches of basketball have arguably been with Serbia on the national stage and national tournaments, right? FIBA, Olympics, Eurobasket, whatever. So.
We talked about this last year during the Olympics.
We did. It feels like every year we're talking about this.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be like the same cycle where it's like we get hyped up over what we see from Nico on the Serbian team, and then you expect him to become that kind of a player, and he gets the opportunity the way he did last year to start, and he's no longer able to function in the same way, and he's disappointing, and then he has to kind of remind himself or remember how it is he's supposed to play within the context of the Miami Heat. Mm-hmm. And that kind of is a struggle for him until he finally figures it out. And yes, there's always the threat of injury too that has seemed to damper his ability to produce the way that we expect him to. Like we see, I mean, those kind of numbers that you were mentioning before, those are phenomenal numbers. Yeah, I can't support an opponent, fine, but it's still a solid overall game for a player who didn't even wind up playing for a majority.
And we've seen Nico have spurts like that in NBA games. Like we've seen this happen from him. And to me, it comes down to the pace. And we had a conversation the other day about what we want to see from Miami's offense and some of the changes. And the number one thing I think about is pace. Jimmy Butler's not here anymore. There's no reason to slow it down, to throw it to Jimmy in the post, let him sort of poke and prod at the defense, bully his way into the paint, and then start creating things from there. They don't have that guy. That guy's not on this roster. And I think it behooves the entire team to play a lot faster because that's what this personnel is. Not just for Nico, but for Bam, for Tyler, for Norm Powell, for Andrew Wiggins. All of these guys would thrive in a faster, up-tempo type of style. So when I watch Serbia, I see two things. I see up-tempo offense that's a ton of just outlet passes from Jokic and all these things. I see up-tempo offense, and I see equal opportunity offense. Just because Jokic is the best player on the planet, he's dominating the game because he is just so great, but it doesn't feel like it's throw the ball to James Harden and get out of the way heliocentric offense. It does still feel like it's a flow, which is, again, what makes Jokic just such an amazing basketball player, is he's able to dominate without all that heliocentric stuff. But if Miami could capture that, even just a little bit of that essence, and unleash it on their offense, I think, again, Nico would thrive and have his best season of his career, and I think a lot of the players on the roster would thrive.
What's the lineup that would allow Nico to play with that kind of up-tempo style? Because I think I teased it at the beginning of the show, and we've discussed it before. The idea of him as a starter is a tantalizing one, but I just think that you're too heavily invested right now. And a training camp will ultimately determine this. If Nico just simply outplays Khalil Ware, it's a moot issue. But I think Ware's likely to be the starter, if for no other reason than because it allows Bam to minimize the wear and tear on his body, and I think that's crucial for Miami moving forward. So it's likely that Ware is going to continue starting, although I think Nico has a case, and maybe he makes it a strong one during training camp. But assuming he comes off the bench, what's the lineup? Because I'm thinking to myself, it's probably Jaime Jaquez, another guy who can play with pace.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of where maybe Pelle Larsson, is he a guy who can play with pace as well? I know we'll talk about him in a second. And who else? If you're staggering minutes, you don't want to go with an all reserves lineup necessarily, but who from the starting lineup? Is it Tyler at the 2 with Davion?
To me, it's one of I like the idea of Powell being there because he could play up tempo. Tyler is a little bit more prodding in when he kind of gets to his worst sort of devices. He could end up kind of dribbling the air out of the ball. Norm Powell is really, especially in transition, he's kind of go. So and Davion Mitchell is the guy I want.
Obviously.
That to me, lineups, whatever, they'll figure it out. I want Davion playing with Nico as much as possible because both of those guys just get downhill in a hurry. And even just as a pick and roll tandem, it makes a ton of sense. I don't want Nico playing the 5, but as a pick and roll tandem, it does make a ton of sense. Or a pick and pop, whatever you want to call it, as a 2-man game, those guys make a lot of sense. And then put Bam out there for defense. I don't have a problem with that.
Yes.
To me, again, Nico should be their version of Naz Reid. He comes in when one of the 2 centers comes out, right? They're going to start Bam and Ware more likely than not. Let's say Ware comes out. He's the first center that goes to the bench. Nico comes in. You're automatically toggling into a little bit more of a smaller type of lineup. You're starting with 2 centers. You take one off the floor. Now you just have the 1 center. You still have him for defense because I think Nico is not a rim protector, so you need some rim protection out there. And then you're just playing. I think Bam can play up tempo. I think all of these guys can.
So Bam stays at the center spot. Nico in for Ware, basically. Davion in for Hero, and then either Larson or Hawkins maybe in for Andrew Wiggins for that added pace.
And Wiggins could play out there too, right? Like he can also run pick and roll and with Jokic or Jovic. I think all those guys could do it. You mentioned Pelle Larsson. Not as hot a start to Eurobasket for him. He has 10 points on 3 of 8 shooting, 0 for 4 on 3-point range, and also fouled out in Sweden's loss to Finland. So, with Pelle, there's so many things that he does really well. There's 2 things that are really limiting him. It's the fact that 3-point shot is not reliable, and the fact that he still just fouls way too much. And both of those things on display in his game for Sweden to open up Eurobasket. So quick last word on this, David, and then we'll get out of here.
No, it's just unfortunate because I think a lot of people had high expectations for him. Solid summer league outing for him. And he clearly is a high IQ player and understands how to play the game. But with that constant effort, and we've talked about this ever since he was drafted, as much as he becomes a fan favorite because he gives that hustle also burns him on more than one occasion. And it leads to the kind of foul trouble. And without him being the consistent offensive player that Miami needs him to be, I think we're still going to see his minutes up and down just because he's up and down as a player.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Will Josh Giddey continue his ascent as a shooter next year for the Chicago Bulls?
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast.
Let's start off with Josh Giddey. Yesterday, we talked about Kobe White, and we used the points per game number for Kobe White. Will he go over under 20 points per game next season, with him being right over 20 points per game last season for the Chicago Bulls? Now we're going to flip that to Josh Giddey. While Josh Giddey's contract is still not here, and I guess one of the things we could talk about is over under 30 more days until Josh Giddey actually signs his contract, but we're not going to focus on that right now. I want to focus at a specific number for Josh Giddey, right? Now, I know people would look at defensive rating or things like that for Josh, and while his defensive rating at 113 last season wasn't absolutely terrible, it still isn't good, and the win shares defensively, those type of things were bad, but we're talking about more kind of the positive things. And so last year, Josh Giddey had his career best three-point shooting percentage at 37.8%, also taking the highest number of threes per game at 4 3-pointers per game. That puts him at a solid enough number. And Josh Giddey being a respectable shooter is huge for him, because with his ability to create off drives, with his ability to pass and create looks for others, if Josh Giddey is a respectable enough shooter, he was a 38% catch and shoot player last season as well, which added to his ability and his flexibility of playing with Kobe White. If Josh Giddey can maintain being a decent enough three-point shooter, that changes the way defenses have to play him. And all Josh Giddey really has to do, I mean, I want him to do more than that, but the thing that Josh Giddey has to do the most shooting-wise is that if he can hit and make defenses pay for sagging off of him defensively at that three-point line, that changes the game for Josh Giddey, right? So he doesn't have to take 6, 8 3-pointers per game. I don't even want Josh Giddey to do that. The key thing for Josh is that when teams play him for the shot and they say, basically, we're going to make Josh Giddey shoot to beat us, make them pay. Hit the first couple of open 3-pointers, make them change the way that they play defense on you. If Josh Giddey can do that, the way you have to guard Josh Giddey completely changes. Josh Giddey is not a 3-level scorer, but I've talked previously before, he can make teams have to guard him as a 3-level scorer if he's just respectable from 3-point range, because of his size, his quick first step, even though he's not the quickest player, and his ability to put his head down and use his size to get near the rim. All those things open up a lot for Josh Giddey. So as far as the over or under for Josh Giddey in the 3-point shooting, last year, 37.8% from the 3-point line. I'm going to say I bet it to be under that, but I'm not saying far under that, and I don't mean that as a negative. If Josh Giddey takes, and I do think the volume is probably going to go up a little bit, right? I don't think you're going to see Josh Giddey take 7, 8 3-pointers per game. I do think you're probably going to see him take about 4 or 5 3-pointers per game for sure. And if that happens, and even if he hits it at a 36% clip, I think that's enough for Josh Giddey to be respectable. Like, keep in mind, the season before he joined the Bulls, he shot the ball 33%. He took a 4% leap in 3-pointers while also taking an extra 3-pointer per game. So that difference, that's a huge difference for Josh Giddey in the number of, just to put that in perspective, right? Josh Giddey only played 70 games last season. The season before that, he played 80 games. But yet Josh Giddey took 35 more threes last season with 10 less games played and hit it at a much better percentage. That's the path that Josh Giddey needs to be on in the 2025-26 season as a shooter. And again, that's only a small portion of his game. You don't need Josh Giddey to be taking a lot of threes. So I think if he does that, That's going to be a key for Josh Giddey, kind of open up his game some. And I think a huge amount. And I think also, and another one to look at for Josh Giddey is the turnover number. He averaged 2.9 turnovers per game. The over under on that, I'd bet a push. I think that turnover number is going to stay the same, but I think his assist number is going to go up. He averaged 7.2 assists for the Bulls last year. I can easily see that going up to more 8 or 9 assists per game. If you can keep that turnover rate at around 2, less than 3 you want to be at, but have closer to 10 assists per game, that's a good place for Josh Giddey to be in. And especially with the offseason and the way that it's gone for Josh Giddey, he's going to have a lot that he has to prove on the court, and we'll see if he's able to do that. Andrew says, I hope he stays. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I don't think it's if he's going to stay. I think the bigger question is what does that look like? Is it the qualifying offer? Is it a shorter term deal? Do they agree on a more mid length of a deal in regards to that? Like, those are the bigger questions that I think when it comes to Josh Giddey for this upcoming season. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think at this point that he's going anywhere else. I mean, we've heard now from Mark Stein, Brett Siegel, even Casey Johnson. The Bulls they value Josh Giddey. Now, that is a bit of a counterproductive programming when you say you value a player as a foundational piece, and yet, we don't have a deal done yet, but that's not just on the Bulls either. So, we'll see what happens there. But I think that's a key thing for Josh Giddey this season is that if he can improve as a shooter with the percentage, or even if it stays the same with a higher volume, those are two very acceptable things for Josh Giddey. I think that shows that he's on a path to being more respected defensively. I think also that helps him be a better fit with Coby White as well in the backcourt, which is still, in fairness, we saw a very small sample size of Coby and Josh Giddey having great chemistry. We need to see a lot more of that. So there's a lot of intangibles that go into this. And, while this whole programming that we're doing here is about, picking an over under on a stat for a player next season, it really is about the expectations for that player just as much. And Josh Giddey has huge expectations coming into him, especially with the way that this offseason is gone. I don't think anybody would say that the expectations aren't there, whether, you have people looking at Josh Giddey and they want to see him fail. That's weird to me. It's always weird to me when people want to see the players in their jersey fail. It's just strange. It's just y'all a little bit of weird people. But then again, I'll say this as well. Like, for the people that see Josh Giddey and just are more so not either negative or positive, or just like, all right, Josh Giddey showed some things, but I need to see more than that. This is a season and an opportunity he's going to have to focus on really showing exactly what you can be. I love being able to hold players to what they say about themselves. Josh Giddey, at the end of the season last year, he directly said, who I was towards the end of the season is more like the player that I believe I am. Now you're going to have an opportunity to go out there and prove that. And, hopefully Josh Giddey is able to do that. And if he does, great. Josh says Josh is probably going to have a good year. His playmaking, I expect to be lights out. It's just how good his offense is going to be. And I mean, that's you're not wrong on that one. One of the things that concerned Bulls fans is that how the Bulls looked in the playing game. Coby and Josh Giddey could get nothing going. Now, it's not all on them, right? You need more shooting, and the hybrid zone defense completely has caused the Bulls fits all last season. And I'm really interested in seeing, like, adding a guy like Isaac Okoro, having Ayo Dosunmu come back. How does that help with that? And teams threw that at the Bulls off and on, even during their run. And of course, when Josh Giddey was hot, shooting over 40% from three, which is I think we all can admit that's an unsustainable number to maintain. It was kind of easier to beat that or overcome that. The Bulls are going to have to be a lot more consistent as a 3-point shooting team this upcoming year if they're going to want to be able to go further. And you guys know, I'm somebody who I legitimately think this team has a chance. I'm not saying that I'm predicting it's going to be easy, but they have a chance, I really think, to be a 500 or above team this year. 39 wins last year. To me, this team has not gotten worse. There have been teams that improve in the Orlando Magic and Atlanta Hawks, for example, but there have also been teams that are going to be taking a lot of steps back. I look at the Bucks as being the worst team this upcoming year. Of course, the Boston Celtics are going to take a bit of a step back. They're still above the Bulls. The Indiana Pacers are going to be going to have a rough season unless Ben Mathurin really wakes up this season and takes that superstar leap. So, we'll see. But to get back on it, Josh Giddey, the 37.8% 3-point shooting, I'm going to bet the under on that just slightly, but I think the volume is going to go up, which kind of offsets that a little bit. And if Josh Giddey can be a 36, 37% three-point shooter for an entire season, taking 3, 4, or 5 3-pointers per game, to me, that puts you in a pretty advantageous position if you're Josh Giddey for the opposing defenses.